In the heart of the North American wilderness, a line has been drawn, not by the hand of nature, but by the invisible force of bureaucracy. Where once the land flowed freely, a new barrier now stands, dividing not just geography, but history and tradition. The legendary Chilkoot Trail, a route that for generations allowed adventurers to trek seamlessly from Alaska into British Columbia, has been abruptly split in two. This trail, steeped in the stories of the Klondike Gold Rush, was more than just a path. It was a living link between two nations, a shared journey through breathtaking landscapes and rugged history. But as of June 17, 2025, a new chapter begins. Crossing the border along this historic trail is now strictly forbidden, enforced by official notices and stern warnings. The freedom to walk from one country to another, once taken for granted here, has been erased overnight. While the trail itself remains open on both the American and Canadian sides, the international boundary has become an impassable wall. Hikers now find their journeys abruptly halted at the border marker, the sense of adventure replaced by confusion and disappointment. This sudden closure isn't the result of a natural disaster, nor is there a new fence or wall. Instead, it's a shift in policy, a decision made far from the mountains but felt deeply by those who love them. After years of pandemic restrictions and flood-related closures, hikers and local communities had hoped for a long-awaited full reopening. Instead, they were met with the news that crossing the border here is now illegal, dashing hopes and upending plans for the summer season. The core issue is the lack of an official port of entry at this remote mountain pass. There are no customs officers, no inspection booths, just wilderness and a simple marker. Now all travelers must detour to a distant official checkpoint, often hours away by car and far removed from the spirit of the trail. This logistical hurdle has transformed what was once a straightforward adventure into a complicated ordeal. What was once a historical pilgrimage retracing the footsteps of gold seekers is now reduced to two truncated hikes. Trekkers are forced to turn back at the border, unable to complete the full journey, their dreams of crossing from one country to another on foot left unfulfilled. The new rule undermines the very spirit of the Chilkoot Trail, transforming a unified cross-border experience into a logistical anticlimax. The sense of accomplishment and connection that came from traversing the entire route has been lost. Officials on both sides cite security and oversight challenges in this isolated location as the reason for the change. They argue that without proper facilities, they cannot ensure the safety and legality of cross-border travel here. The result is that a cherished tradition, one that brought together people from both nations and celebrated a shared history, is now stranded in limbo. Local communities and hikers alike are left grappling with a border that's suddenly much harder to cross, wondering if the spirit of the Chilkoot Trail can ever truly be restored. The closure of the Chilkoot Trail's border crossing has sent shockwaves through the hiking community. Adventurers from around the world, who planned for months or years, now face canceled dreams and wasted preparations. The new policy makes a point-to-point hike impossible, forcing hikers into unsatisfying loops on either side. The trail's historical continuity is lost, and the towns that depend on trail tourism, like Skagway, feel the economic sting. This is part of a broader trend. As borders harden, cross-border recreation suffers. Traditions that once united communities are now disrupted by distant policy decisions. The Chilkoot was a meeting point. Now, it's a symbol of separation. Even in the wilderness, geopolitics intrudes, turning a path of unity into a route of division. The closure of the Chilkoot Trail is more than just a temporary inconvenience for hikers and outdoor enthusiasts. It stands as a clear symptom of the growing tensions simmering along the US-Canada border, tensions that have been quietly escalating in recent years. Where the border was once a symbol of friendly cooperation and open exchange, it is now increasingly defined by caution and suspicion. Political rhetoric and heightened security concerns have replaced the easygoing partnership that once characterized the relationship between these two nations. Former President Trump's repeated claims about threats coming from the northern border, especially regarding fentanyl trafficking, have fueled public anxiety and suspicion. This is despite the fact that most data shows the majority of illicit drugs actually enter the US from the southern border, not the north. Canadian officials have consistently pushed back against these claims, emphasizing cooperation and data-driven policy. Yet the result has been a border that is less fluid and more heavily guarded, with increased checks and a sense of uncertainty for those crossing. These disputes and policy shifts don't just impact hikers on the Chilkoot Trail, they ripple outward, affecting trade, tourism, and the daily movement of people and goods. The goodwill and trust that once underpinned the border are now being tested. Increasingly, border policies are being shaped by defensiveness and political posturing, rather than the spirit of partnership and mutual benefit that once prevailed. The closure of the Chilkoot Trail may seem like a small local issue, but it is actually a reflection of a much larger geopolitical drift, a sign of how even remote places are caught up in global currents. The world's longest undefended border, once celebrated for its openness, is now increasingly marked by friction, barriers, and a sense of unease. The impact of these changes is felt far beyond the mountains and forests, reaching into the daily lives of families, workers, and communities on both sides of the border, shaping the future of US-Canada relations in ways both seen and unseen. Adding drama to the US-Canada relationship, Donald Trump has floated the idea of Canada becoming the 51st state. His remarks, more political theater than policy, have been met with astonishment and ridicule in Canada. The proposal is seen as fundamentally absurd, requiring impossible legal and political changes in both countries. Canadian leaders, from Trudeau to Ford, have dismissed the idea with a mix of firmness and humor. The suggestion only highlights the strength of Canadian identity and the near-universal opposition to surrendering sovereignty. Trump's comments sparked debate, but only in the realm of speculation. The idea remains a political fantasy, a reminder of the divergent paths the two neighbors have chosen. The response to the idea of Canadian statehood is swift and unanimous. Absolutely not. Canadians' sense of identity is rooted in a unique political system, universal health care, and a multicultural ethos. The thought of abandoning this heritage is unthinkable, not out of anti-Americanism but deep pro-Canadian sentiment. Leaders across the spectrum reject the idea, united in their desire to remain distinct and independent. Canada's parliamentary system, gun laws, bilingualism, and public health care are pillars of national identity. The statehood debate only reinforces Canadian patriotism and the commitment to charting their own course. The future is clear. Canada will remain a proud, sovereign nation side by side with its American neighbor. The notion of Canada as the 51st state is virtually impossible, blocked by immense legal and political obstacles. U.S. statehood requires congressional approval and presidential signature, a challenge even for U.S. territories. For Canada, it would mean dissolving a sovereign nation, likely requiring a national referendum that would fail spectacularly. Even if both countries agreed, merging legal systems, treaties, and governments would be a bureaucratic nightmare. The process would take decades and is politically unmanageable. U.S. politics would also resist. Adding a liberal-leaning state of 40 million would upend the balance of power. Canadian resistance, logistical complexity, and American division make statehood pure fiction. The idea belongs to speculative fiction, not reality. Statehood in the U.S. is a long, politically charged process, historically reserved for territories, not sovereign nations. Alaska and Hawaii's admission in 1959 followed years of debate and opposition. Today, statehood debates focus on places like Puerto Rico and D.C., not allied democracies like Canada. Modern international norms value self-determination and sovereignty, not annexation. Persuading Canada to dissolve itself is a concept from a bygone era, not the 21st century. Trump's proposal is extraordinary and unrealistic, far outside historical precedent. Even willing U.S. territories struggle for statehood. For Canada, it's unthinkable. The history of U.S. expansion offers no model for absorbing a country like Canada. If Canada became the 51st state, it would trigger a political earthquake in the U.S. with 40 million people. Canada would instantly be the most populous state, reshaping the federal government. The Electoral College would be recalibrated, giving Canada immense influence in presidential elections. In Congress, Canada would command a large delegation, diluting other states' power. 2 new senators would shift the Senate's balance, likely favoring Democrats. Canada's liberal policies, healthcare, environment, gun control, would reshape national debates. Fierce opposition from Republicans would be inevitable, seeing it as a permanent threat to their power. The political consequences alone make statehood a non-starter. The closure of the Chilkoot Trail is more than just a temporary inconvenience, it's a powerful symbol of the era we're living in. This once busy passage, now silent and empty, stands as a reminder of how quickly the world can change, and how those changes ripple through even the most remote corners of our lives. The closed trail highlights the ongoing tension between the needs of local communities, who rely on open borders for daily life and economic survival, and the priorities of national governments, which often focus on security and control above all else. For many, the border is not just a line on a map, but a living part of their community. For the people of Skagway and their Canadian neighbors, the Chilkoot Trail is more than a hiking route. It's a shared heritage, a link to history, and an economic lifeline that supports local businesses, tourism, and cross-border friendships. Its closure disrupts not only commerce, but also the sense of unity that has long defined this region. The impact is felt everywhere. Shuttered shops, empty streets, and disappointed travelers all bear witness to how decisions made far away can have real, lasting consequences for everyday people. The closure is a stark illustration of how distant policies can reshape local realities overnight. Meanwhile, the occasional talk of annexing Canada is little more than political theater, attention-grabbing headlines and speeches that are completely detached from the real, lived experiences of those who call the borderlands home. The true relationship between the US and Canada is neither one of open borders without limits, nor of insurmountable division. Instead, it's a complex, evolving partnership built on cooperation, negotiation, and mutual respect, a relationship that has weathered many storms. The real strength of this partnership lies in its countless connections, economic ties, cultural exchanges, and personal relationships that cross the border every day. Families, friends, and businesses depend on these links, which form the backbone of life along the 49th parallel. When borders harden and access is restricted, these vital ties are put at risk. The sense of community and shared purpose that has long defined the border region can quickly begin to fray. The future of the US-Canada relationship depends on our ability to focus on cooperation, understanding, and practical solutions, rather than getting distracted by political posturing or divisive rhetoric. Open borders matter, not just for hikers and travelers, but for the peace, prosperity, and shared future of two great nations. The 49th parallel is more than a boundary, it's a bridge that connects people, histories, and hopes on both sides.